Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we are here this week to talk about G.I. Joe in 3D, issue number 3. So threes, a lot of threes going on this week. For you new listeners, this is the podcast where I cover every single episode of the G.I. Joe Sunbow cartoon. We did Sunbow, we did DIC, we did Extreme. I've also covered all the issues of G.I. Joe Real American Hero from Marvel. And now we're working our way through some of the Blackthorne stuff. Did some action, just did a lot of that G.I. Joe, that good G.I. Joe stuff. That pre 1995 G.I. Joe stuff. That's my era. We'll venture out one day, but for now, that's kind of where I'm living. So welcome aboard, longtime listeners. Thanks again for listening. I hope everyone, to say you enjoyed last week's episode is weird, but I hope I hope that last week's episode, which was a tribute to Mark Bright, I hope that caused you to Google Mark Bright, whether it was to reminisce some of his great work or just to see it, and learn more about his stuff in case you didn't know. That's what I hope out of last week. I certainly hope you enjoyed the pod, but really it's more about, I hope that it drove you to learn more and see more. I personally went back and I've been rereading Armor Wars this week. And wow, is it hot stuff. It's great. One of the cool things I found in there, I wish I had seen this before we recorded last week's. Some may say the first G.I. Joe Mark Bright drew, was in that, what was it, G.I. Joe 97, 96, somewhere in that era. That is not true, ladies and gentlemen. The very first G.I. Joe that Mark Bright drew in Marvel Comics was William the Refrigerator Perry. If you follow me on Twitter, if you're still on Twitter, check out the feed. You could find me on Twitter at Joe on Joe Pod, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Say hello. I love it. Love hearing from you guys and gals. And you could check out our Patreon, all that stuff. Definitely do this before we get to how he drew William the Refrigerator Perry. Definitely give our sponsors some love and support, the Movies in a Meal podcast.
In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies in a Meal podcast. The Movies in a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews. They do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies in a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies in a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too.
Okay, so how did he draw William the Refrigerator Perry? Well, Iron Man, Tony Stark, is making some social dilettante rounds at some party. And who is there but William the Refrigerator Perry? As a Bears fan and a lifelong Bears fan growing up, also award number 72. When I played ball, I loved it. I completely forgot that he drew the fridge. And he actually had two scenes. There was a nice close up of his face, and Mark killed it. He looked just like Fridge. And then there was a little like a button on the scene. A couple panels later, where the Fridge kind of gave a smart retort. I loved it. But technically, Fridge was a member of G.I. Joe. So guess what? I believe it was Iron Man 222 is the first time Mark Bright drew a member of G.I. Joe. So check out my Twitter feed. I posted a picture of it on there. Very funny and fun little bit of trivia. Next time you're locked into that G.I. Joe, deep G.I. Joe trivia, and someone asks you want to stump somebody with a fact, there you go. Use that. So this week we're talking about G.I. Joe in 3D, issue number 3. For me, this was the last G.I. Joe in 3D that I got when I was a kid. 4, 5, 6 in the annual I picked up as an adult. And as a kid, it's not that I didn't like it. I think it was more of they were harder to find. And sure enough, as an adult, 4, 5, 6 in the annual are a little they're a little more rare, so they're a little scarcer to find. So but I loved the issue 2. I thought it was great. I think this issue works really well. I think the pacing on this one is a little better. It's a pretty standard story, but it's told really well. Pacing's, like I said, pacing's better than the space one. And what a lovely surprise to see the cover. And I've seen this cover. I've this is one of those fun covers that stays in my mind. It's Crystal Ball. 1, 2, 3. There's 5 images of Crystal Ball on the cover, laughing at Psyche Out, as Psyche Out seemingly holds his head and goes insane, and different iterations of Crystal Ball smiling and laughing and chuckling and all that stuff. Next to Psyche Out rather, is one of his little sonic cannon, his arm sonic cannons, whatever they were called, is laying on the ground next to him, and then the other one is this pistol. And I want to throw this out there. It seems like the pistol's like I'm so crazy, I'm going to pick it up and use it. A lot of orange on the cover. Everyone hates Crystal Ball. I get it. Get that out of your system, because if you go with what he is, it's actually a pretty effective issue. But this cover was drawn by Patrick Zircher. And Zircher has had notable runs on a lot of modern comics. If you're not familiar with his work, you should check it out, because it's quite attractive stuff. He had a solid run on Thunderbolts, Cable and Deadpool, New Warriors, Savage Avengers. He did some Conan stuff. Like it's really great stuff. He's got a very, I would say Neil Adams influenced. It's funny though, because this cover is it's very young Zircher, and it's got a lot of Ron Lim to it. This cover does. In fact, I thought it was him until I looked a little closer and saw the signature. But Zircher's stuff is very organic. Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of. Like it's really rich, and there's lots of roundness to his stuff that the stuff that I've seen is more modern stuff. Everyone grows. Jesus, this book is what, 87, so almost 40 years old. But I was very surprised. I did not know that he was working in the industry back in 87. I wonder if this has to be one of his earliest stuff. But it's great, and frankly, it's a representational cover, which we don't get very often in G.I. Joe. And we a lot of literal covers, a lot of pictures of action and things like that, but we don't often get a looming Spectre or Vision or Fake Out cover. I guess we got a lot of Fake Out covers, but covers that aren't actual reality. We don't get those in G.I. Joe a lot. So here's one of them. So I love it. Patrick Zircher, love it.
Yo, Joe!
As always, putting my 3D glasses on. And the first splash page is a banger. Now, the story again is by John Stevenson. E.R. Cruz is doing the pencil again, and he does a wonderful job. Adrian Morrow is the inker. Letters by David Cody Weiss. And the 3D process is by the Fortified Fritches. And it's got the book's got a Hasbro, all rights reserved copyright on it. I don't remember seeing that. It certainly might have been their last issue, but I don't remember seeing it. So it's The Quiet War. And it's a fun splash page with lots of depth to it, for real. It's pictures. There's this whole issue is going to be a lot of ephemeral stuff. So actually we may fly through this pretty quick. It's pictures of Psyche Out screaming. And again, there's a lot of pictures of Psyche Out screaming in this book. So again, that might get through it pretty quick. But he's in the battlefield. He's got his little radar dishes with him. And the radar dishes absolutely pop on this 3D page. It's This almost looks like a one of those like dioramas that people put together. They even put this really looks good actually. So there's backgrounds of him in the distance, gets closer is another layer. Then it's a little close up of his face screaming. It's another layer. Then there's actually a long shot of his whole body. And within that's where you get some of the 3D effect on the radar dish. Then there's a small one of his full body kind of in action. And he's jumping over the words, "The Quiet War." But "the" is in the back. "Quiet" is closer than that. His knee is sitting above the "quiet." It's actually on the same plane as the "quiet," but his hips are in the same plane as the. And then "war" pops out in front of that. Like, it's really good. They did a lovely job. So good job, Fortified Fridges, whoever you may be.
Yo, Joe!
And this whole page, and a lot of these pages, we're in the dream space. So you see words like fear, panic, where am I? Fascinating, hallucination. And it's Psyche Out, surrounded by either smoke or fire or something like that. There's like a ghostly apparition over him. The middle panel has a nice 3D effect on he's got a pistol drawn. He doesn't really know where to shoot. So Psyche Out's having a moment is what it is. This whole page is happening. Demons are crawling from whatever this nether world is. And it's just a lot of confusion.
Yo, Joe!
So we get more of that on this page rather. And Psyche Out's getting, there's words like anxiety, panic, confusion. This isn't real. Calm down. More ghosts, more demons pop out. He flees across the nightmare, and he actually finally sees someone in the distance. And we don't know friend or foe, but it's someone's leg. And this is all told through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 panels on the page. Nice variety of angles and camera shots, but ultimately it is all just different angles of someone screaming in the ether. However, you throw that 3D on it, and it pops pretty well.
Yo, Joe!
And now enter Crystal Ball. He's there, and he actually is helping Psyche Out here. So, he says, stand up and face your fears like a man. It's the only way they can be vanquished. Follow me. And they run off in a nice half-page spread to kind of face it. This very much feels like a Doctor Strange comic book. Substitute Doctor Strange for Crystal Ball, which you actually can easily do because they look similar in their look with the gray temples and the mustache and the bare chest. No. So it's Psyche Out getting help from who we know is his enemy. And so something's up.
Yo, Joe!
This is a very Doctor Strange panel. And Crystal Ball's using some kind of weird energy powers coming out of his hand. Again, this whole thing's in a dream, so there's energy powers and things like that. But he's using his strength to repel these demons and keep Psyche Out safe. Miserable cretins. He checks on, sees if Psyche Out's okay. And Psyche Out starts to fade away. And Crystal Ball is telling him, no, you've got to stay with me. This is the only place you're going to be safe. So he's holding on to him, trying to keep him onto this plane of this planet.
Yo, Joe!
I got to tell you, I said this is the first issue. It's really difficult to see in these 3D glasses. The 3D effect pops. So I'm going to take them off for a sec. The 3D effect absolutely pops. But it's, I think it's a function of me being old. It's just harder to both talk into the microphone and read the page. So this next page is the breaking of this spell, right? So like a lot of traditional stories that involve brainwashing, mind, whatever, you start in that mindscape, right? You've seen it a million times on TV. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies start this way, right? You start the movie in someone's dream. We don't necessarily know it's a dream, even though this pretty apparent that it's not reality because it's a G.I. Joe comic book and there's demons and smoke monsters. But you start in someone's dream. You don't know the score, and then they snap out of it, and then we finally find out a little bit more about what's going on. And in this case, it's Crystal Ball. He's actually screaming, "No!" He was so close. There's nice layouts on this page, and this works well to pop the page for 3D because you've got Psyche Out strapped to a gurney. And so he's like, the camera's sitting above it. And so instead of like forcing a weird side perspective, Cruz just goes up and shows us the whole room from like what would be a security camera footage shot. And he uses a diagonal cross-section panel to cut across the whole thing, which he mirrors on the following page, but going in the other direction. Not for the full page, but it makes a nice, when they're laid out together, they do make a nice effect of popping both sides of the page. And Crystal Ball's very upset that Psyche Out's brain is so strong. He can wander through his thoughts while you sleep, you being Psyche Out, so while Psyche Out sleeps. And Crystal Ball's trying to get some information out of him. He says, the secret you are hiding will be mine. But he respects him so much that he hopes no damage to your strong mind will happen. But I have a job to do. At that point, we get a little vocal interruption by Cobra Commander. It's actually a Viper or someone. He just says, Cobra Commander requests any update. And he yells at this Viper. I don't really think we can tell who that Viper. Yeah, it's all over electronics. So we don't really know who he is. But basically, it's the introduction of Cobra Commander. This is also a great time to point out that, again, they're really using the 1987 hit crew on these 3Ds. So whether it was by choice or by edict, they really are zeroing in on those 1987 releases.
Yo, Joe!
Especially because the next panel we meet the rest of the Joes that are in this involved in this little brouhaha, and it's Tunnel Rat, Dial Tone, and Jinx. They're driving around town in something in a van that says Moro Inc. I'm assuming that's an inside joke to somebody. And Tunnel Rat is driving with Dial Tone riding shotgun, and in the back is Jinx. And Jinx is seemingly sleeping, but not sleeping. What Jinx is doing is like meditating, and she's trying to zero in on where Psyche Out is. So this whole comic deals with a little bit more metaphysical stuff that I think G.I. Joe is used to, but why not? It works. You're dealing with Jinx and you're dealing with Crystal Ball. So, ninjas and not telepaths. What was it? Use a fortune teller. Yeah. Mystic. That's the word I'm thinking of. Nice usage on this page of breaking up these panels that could be very boring. Again, I'm saying they do that. He does this diagonal thing in the middle, which really cuts it and makes it, just makes everything work. It also brings the eyes and brings the action, even though you're reading each panel, obviously you're reading it left to right, but it brings the action all the way down to the lower corner of the page to make you want to turn the page. It's a nice use of that.
Yo, Joe!
I gotta say, this is the page where I didn't think that Cruz got the note that Jinx is a woman. Even though on the previous page, when you look at her, it does appear to be a woman who's kind of napped out. She's curled up, but this close-up he draws of Jinx on this page. That's a dude. That is a man, baby. It's a guy's eyebrows. It doesn't feel like a woman's eyebrows at all. Hunched over, it looks like a guy. So it's weird. I don't know what that is, and it continues a little bit actually until the end. Almost every time you see Jinx drawn, she's not very feminine at all until you get kind of towards the end of the book when she has to like jump out, and I'm talking about page. It's funny, we'll get there, but it's page 18 and 19. They're opposing pages. On page 18, the close-up looks pretty masculine, and then on page 19, the close-up absolutely remembers that she's a woman. So I don't know if there were redraws. Maybe there was some confusion, that Jinx was, you know what I'm saying? Like there might literally have been, but wasn't Jinx in the previous one too? I don't know. Anyway, it's just weird. And it's not a criticism. The art's actually great. Storytelling's really great. It just stood out to me that, it looks like Storm Shadow, especially because it's all black and white. But anyway, Jinx is trying to reach Psyche Out mentally and not having a lot of luck. And I think we will find out what they're doing as the story goes on, but she's basically trying to keep tabs on Psyche Out because he's captured. As you read it, you get the vibe that she's trying to locate Psyche Out. But so now we cut back to Crystal Ball, and he's going back into Psyche Out's brain.
Yo, Joe!
More 3D voodoo, nice effects. Kind of a from the perspective of Crystal Ball, like his eyes view as he's like swooping down into Psyche Out's brain. We get a close up of his eyes. As Psyche Out's eyes open up, then we're on this mental landscape. You know, think of the astral plane with Professor Xavier and stuff. They're on a giant rock floating in the middle of nowhere.
Yo, Joe!
This is again where we get very toyetic. So on this rock in the middle of nowhere, right? Psyche Out's just kind of alone. The voice we now understand is the voice of Crystal Ball talking to him the whole time. And this is when a cadre of pogos, remember the pogo? Obviously we all do. We love G.I. Joe. The Cobra pogo shows up again, driving home those toys of '87. Well, a bunch of pogos show up and they start pogoing all around him, and they're alive. They're not just pogos, but they're actual living beings. So like they're spring legs are kind of arms, like they're kind of reaching out towards them. So they're demonic pogos are possessed, and they're chasing Psyche Out. I'm gonna toss these glasses back on real quick because that page probably has some good pogo action, and it does. Pogos are sitting on their own plane and all that stuff. It pops really well.
Yo, Joe!
Psyche Out's escaping these pogos, running from them, reaching for his pistol that he can fire back. So this is all in his brain, so it's like he's unlocking ways to fight back against whatever Crystal Ball is doing to him. He knocks out a couple pogos, but as he does that, he gets hit from a different direction because there's more bad guys in the mix.
Yo, Joe!
Cobra Mambas, 1987, all over the place. Some Cobra Mambas flying in from the distance. This top panel, it's about one third across. It plays well. So there's kind of like mountain ranges that they give them, and the Mambas are cresting over them. They're shooting one of the pods, one of the arms of the Mamba, one of the pieces that break off and fly on its own, has broken off. They're all shooting at Crystal Ball. But Crystal Ball's very closer to the camera. Then there's a layer of mountain behind him, and then a layer of mountains behind that. And the Mambas are sitting about midway through. It's done really well. You get a second panel of cameras facing Psyche Out rather, and Psyche Out shooting at the Mambas, but he's essentially shooting over the camera. And there's really good stuff with the gun, the way the gun's firing with the special effects on that, and then there's a laser blast that pops in front of Crystal Ball. These 3Ds are really done well. If I had the eyes of a teenager again, I'd probably be able to see this even better. But the Mambas are going to have their day. What's cool is the one pod that flew off. So now in the second panel on the bottom, there's 3 panels on the bottom row. The pod is still off. So you're seeing this Mamba with only the middle and the sidecar, and it's missing the right sidecar. So that's kind of cool. Now this is also where the Mamba gets a little bit like the pogos, where it's alive, so to speak. A big hook comes down and kind of grabs Psyche Out.
Yo, Joe!
So now he's getting whisked away, and the other Mamba pod is flying in pursuit. He's getting carried into the clouds. Very ethereal, lots of smoke. There's kind of a face in the clouds too, a little bit, to be honest. I wonder if that's intentional or if that's just me seeing it in the 3D. I feel like there's in the top right, which would be awesome because earlier there absolutely was a face. If like that's like the face of, it meant to be like the face of Crystal Ball manipulating this whole thing. Because when you get to the bottom, it's certainly this giant Crystal Ball hand that catches Psyche Out as he's dropped from this claw on the Mamba.
Yo, Joe!
And this page is awesome. Picture those 70s Marvel blacklight posters if you can. This page could be a G.I. Joe blacklight poster, and I'm not exaggerating that. If obviously it's 3D, so it would need some coloring, but it's a giant Crystal Ball with his arm outstretched to the viewer, So there's a lot of 3D stuff going on there. Just like the best 3D movies, things are flying at the camera. So his fingertips are flying at you. Psyche Out's on his fingertips. There's smoke and action effects that are bouncing off Psyche Out to catch the eye. Crystal Ball's in the distance. He's pointing his right index finger at Psyche Out. And this page would blow your mind if it were in that Marvel Blacklight model on your wall in the 70s. It's really cool. It's got like the fire effects in here in this little dream sequence that Cruz is drawing. It's very reminiscent of the Phoenix effect that like when Byrne drew the Phoenix or Cockrum drew the Phoenix, in X-Men. It's kind of like that. There's not actual bird imagery in it, but the way just the flames are dancing, whether it's smoke or flames or whatever it is, it gives me that vibe. So this should be a poster with the words G.I. Joe on the bottom. The G.I. Joe logo on the bottom. That should be it, totally. And this is now where, in the dream, Psyche Out realizes that it's Crystal Ball and he's not his friend. Because it says, "Welcome back, my small friend. So good of you to drop in." So he's now revealed himself to be a bad guy within this dreamscape, too.
Yo, Joe!
I gotta take these glasses off again so I can actually see the page. So there's more pages where Psyche Out's trying. So, earlier when I said that it's well paced and stuff, I am feeling, as I'm rereading this time, I am feeling the bloat, it's neat. And the images are really good. Actually, the images carry this, which makes sense because it is a 3D book. So you do want that. And these are very cool images, but there is like story bloat. Like it's just, there's only, there's so much. And let me also confess, I don't really enjoy Doctor Strange stories. I don't. And I think it's for the same reason that this is having the effect on me of those pictures. Like they look cool and they're well drawn, but as far as story goes, they don't do much to move a story, right? Especially when you know that they're not really happening. There's something in my brain that just goes, I don't care. Like you're on an astral plane and you've seen crazy stuff and you know it's not real, or we know it's not real. And I know that it works really well for some. Obviously there's huge Doctor Strange fans and it works really well for some people. There's something about me that I've never connected with that. I have the Doctor Strange omnibus sitting here at my home. I need to get around to rereading and just immerse myself in it and see if I feel any different. But I've kind of always felt this way about Doctor Strange stories, where it's all the time taken and the panels taken of drawing all this trippy whippy stuff. It doesn't tickle in my head. It just doesn't tick my fancy there. Maybe it's because I haven't done enough drugs in my life. This is another picture at the end here. I guess there's a little bit of femininity of Jinx. There's a little bit of femininity, I guess, on her eyelashes, but it looks really masculine. So again, this is another panel where I was like, is that supposed to be a dude? Like it looks like a dude in this. So I do wonder if there was some wires crossed as far as Jinx's identity.
Yo, Joe!
And they cleaned it up for a few pages, but they left a few untouched. You know what I'm saying? So now Crystal Ball he's saying because Psyche Out's kind of given up, and he's like, "You're not resisting? Like I thought you were made of sterner stuff, But as that's happening, what's happening is Psyche Out's drawing power from Jinx, and Psyche Out starts to grow. So now Psyche Out is no longer the size of Crystal Ball's hand. He's now the size of a full-grown man.
Yo, Joe!
And we learn that Psyche Out says he's finally figured this place out. So once he gets a hold of it, now he can give him a taste of his own medicine. So we see Psyche Out use his radar dish things, which is awesome. I don't know that I've ever seen him use those. Subsonic vibrations. They induce a feeling of unease, which becomes panic and finally hysteria. All with no physical effect at all. Just the thing to incapacitate an opponent without harming him. So Psyche Out is winning, even if they are on the astral plane. It finally dawned on me what you were doing. I'd heard about a Cobra mind reader, but I figured it was a joke. I guess I was wrong. Imagine Psyche Out tells you were a joke. That's having a bad day.
Yo, Joe!
Psyche Out says, so now he's kind of beaten him in the dream. He says he doesn't really understand what are we even doing here. Your mistake is grabbing a Joe with a degree in psychology. It wasn't hard to get my reality back. This is my mind after all. Crystal Ball seems to have given up. He says, in my country, Psyche Out's surprised that he's giving up so quickly. And Crystal Ball says, in my country, we accept losses graciously as befits gentlemen. So he's basically saying, you won, the game is over. We're going to quit this. And as this is happening, there is a spectral face in the back, and it is this kind of a monster that's sneaking up on. Think of like Zemnu the Titan. That's what it kind of looks like, sneaking up behind Psyche Out. So as this is happening, and Crystal Ball is giving up, the kind of masculine looking Jinx warns Psyche Out to look out.
Yo, Joe!
Now we get some eyes that look like feminine eyes. There's, the way the eyebrows are arched in this one look feminine. The eyelashes are longer. This looks more traditionally feminine. So I don't know what was happening on the other pages. And I mean that with all due respect, because I really like the artwork in this. I think E.R. Cruz is very, very talented. It feels like there were some mixed signals when he maybe first started this and finished those pages. And then someone sent him a note. So Psyche Out does get bamboozled, hoodwinked, and this giant crystal ball monster, whatever it is, kind of zaps him from behind. At the same time, in the real world, Jinx jumps out of that van that the guys were driving in, and she yells, he's in trouble. How does she know? Well, let's just get after her. So they were kind of driving around trying to find where Psyche Out went. We don't really know. I mean, there's not a lot of time spent in the real world, so we don't really know where they're at.
Yo, Joe!
Crystal Ball is cradling Psyche Out. He respects him. He says, your psychology against the mental might of Crystal Ball. This is like someone from Scientology going up against Crystal Ball, and they're like, Scientology and the Z News have beaten your psychotherapy and your antidepressants. But within this base, wherever this Cobra base is located, Tunnel Rat and Dial Tone and Jinx, they're taking on some Cobra troopers. You don't see the troopers that well, so it's kind of hard to make out who they are. But there's a firefight happening, and Crystal Ball goes, quote unquote, goes in for what he came for. So he's reaching into Psyche Out's mind. While this is happening, Jinx is mowing people down with her sword. This is a cool 3D effect. Her sword is popping. Yeah, it looks really cool. Like the sword slash pops across these Cobra troopers. Crystal Ball's hand here looks really great. It morphs into because remember, they're still in the dreamscape, like a demon hand, like a demon. You think of like the monkey's paw, like a demon claw hand, and it's reaching into his mind. And then we cut again to the real world where Jinx and the gang are just mowing down Cobras. So there's this now has really nice pacing of they're going back and forth between panels to show you what's happening in the real world. He's getting closer to his dream. By showing that hand turned demonic amps up the anticipation even more. Like it speeds up that more has happened since the last time you saw him reaching for his head. It's a really cool subtle trick of the art.
Yo, Joe!
Crystal Ball gives him a come out wherever you are. Tunnel Rat mowing away people. There's this is a good. Let me double check that. Yeah, that's a cool 3D effect on his weapon. He's kind of shooting towards the camera, so that really pops well. There's some explosions happening in the real world. That's funny. They happen to be in a tunnel, and I think that's why Tunnel Rat says this is the life, because he enjoys fighting in tunnels. I'm not kidding. But Jinx is using her kind of pseudo telepathy to track down Psyche Out.
Yo, Joe!
And here we go. Crystal Ball has pulled from Psyche Out's mind this, I guess Crystal Ball is what you could say. And it's in this first panel, it's neat because in this first panel, it's an orb of knowledge. It's in his hand. And then the next panel, it's still in the dream world because there's some clouds in the background. He like drops Psyche Out. And now we learn what he's been after the whole time. He says, Cobra now is the current location of the G.I. Joe base. It'll be child's play to wipe them away. But now we cut to the real world. And now Psyche Out's still strapped to this gurney. He's not, thrown to the ground. Crystal Ball's holding his hand, but there's no physical thing in it because it's all a figment of imagination. So it's kind of neat. But Crystal Ball has great respect for the combatant, the mental combatant that he had. He says, a pity I cannot let you live, but a good foe deserves a quick death. I'm a sucker for this stuff. When Larry would do it with the flying aces, Ace and Wild Weasel, I respect you. Didn't Zartan and Storm Shadow feel like that? They had a showdown like that. Like it's this, okay, we had a good fight. All right, I gotta kill you now, but I'm gonna have to do it. I'm a sucker for that move. But as this happens, Tunnel Rat, now I don't know. I'm not gonna not talk about this panel because I don't know what's going on in this panel. Crystal Ball famously has stone white streaks in his hair. He's also a white guy, European. Tunnel Rat, Asian fellow of Asian descent, kicks down the door and he yells, "Not so fast, Whitey." I don't know. Is he talking about his hair? Is he talking about his Europeanness? I have no idea, but it's pretty funny. It's a funny panel. And I'm not bringing that up to say cancel anyone or fire anyone or, whatever. But I was a little shocked when I saw Tunnel Rat just yelling, "Not so fast, Whitey." That was weird. So they got their guns on him. Yo, Joe! And Crystal Ball's there, Tunnel Rat's there to rescue Psyche Out, and Crystal Ball's making his escape. So like any good Cobra adventure, while the Joes are tending to wounded, captured, something like that, the Cobra tends to slip away, which is what happens here. He says, "Never discount a live foe, fools." And he heads out through a side door. And he goes, "Whew. That Psyche Out was a worthy opponent. I think Crystal Ball has a crush on Psyche Out, and I'm all for it. I think that'd be fantastic." But he does get caught he runs right into Dial Tone and Jinx. He says, Dial Tone rather says he was just the appetizer. So Jinx and Crystal Ball are going to have a throwdown. Jinx says she's the main course, and she bites back. Yo, Joe! So now we get some action. So this is cool. So for a book where all the action really took place in the head, it's very action heavy on the end of it. And it was a little bit what we had in the last issue too, right? Where there was a little slowness getting there. And then there was a bunch of action towards the end. But this works really well. And this actually works well with the story too, where all the action is literally in the mental landscape. And it was good. It was well told. I just, as I said before, not for me. So we learned that Crystal Ball finds fighting females distasteful, but if you insist, and Jinx goes karate to karate with Crystal Ball. Some good 3D stuff. We got Jinx's foot flying out, lots of fists being thrown towards the camera, breaking planes, adding to the effect, hands breaking planes. So there's just well done on the 3D effects on this page. Yo, Joe! More of the same here. Crystal Ball catches her and he kind of whips her, and he wins the fight, which it's funny because I'm reading it going, what? Jinx lost to Crystal Ball? But he says, even sensing her thoughts, I was lucky to defeat her. So he's using his mental telepathy to read the mind of his opponent in a fight to get an upper edge. So as a reader, you go, okay, so that must be how he beat Jinx. And then you get to the final two panels where it's Dial Tone helping Jinx up, and he says, you okay? And she gives him a thumbs up and says, I'd say we pulled it off. Which then you really go, oh, of course Jinx didn't lose to Crystal Ball. Yo, Joe! The whole thing was a plan. So Psyche Out's okay. They make their way out. Tunnel Rat's helping Psyche Out. They make their way out. We see that Crystal Ball steals a car from, I guess it's the Cobra carpool or something. Like, you don't really know, but he does yell, "We are under siege from the Joe team, hundreds of them," which is very funny because he's inflating the number of people that drove him out. That's really pretty funny. "I shall contact Cobra Commander." And the two dudes who he stole the, quote unquote, stole the car from are like, "What did he say? Like, what's happening?" So it kind of makes me think like this is a Springfield type of situation. And he just stole someone's car, not realizing that the Joes aren't really chasing him here. That's kind of a funny page.
Yo, Joe!
So he's making his way down the highway, calls Cobra Commander. He says, "I have what we're looking for." Cobra Commander in his full battle armor. He says, "All went well, I trust." He says, "But of course, we now know where the Joe's mobile headquarters will be for the next 6 months. We'll launch an offensive at our leisure." Cobra Commander says, "Very good. Report to a safe house at once to transmit the data."
Yo, Joe!
And now we learn that the Joes were listening in the whole time. Maybe they planted a bug on him or something, because they actually hear Cobra Commander saying that. And Psyche Out says he's got a huge headache. Having someone in your head actually there, it gets weird. But we learn from Jinx that too bad he got the wrong info. "You held my post-hypnotic suggestion well, Psyche Out. He was completely fooled." So Psyche Out says, "For a moment, I swore that you were in there with me too, Jinx." And she says, "Well, there are more things in heaven and earth. Horatio." So she's throwing a little quote. And he needs some aspirin as they drive off. So I'm assuming Jinx did some version of the Urashikage mindset, implanted some fake news into Psyche Out's head. And this is no fault of this comic book. We don't need it for this comic book. But like, how did this start? Like, what? When did she have time to do that? Did they purposely let Psyche Out get caught? You know what I mean? Like, how did this adventure happen? And was it to feed them bad information? Is it specifically bad information so that when Cobra goes to that location, like it's a trap kind of a thing? Like they told him the base is going to be in New Mexico. Obviously they're still in Utah or something. And then when Cobra shows up, the Joes are waiting for him. Like what exactly, how did it start? It's really the best question to ask here, but you don't have to ask it because it's a fun adventure. It really is. It's really well told. The pacing's not that bad. It's just, it's my overall lack of connection to the adventures that take place on the spirit plane kind of a thing. But I don't think overall the pacing was that bad. Every time he dipped into the spirit plane, it was a different experience. Remember, it started with Crystal Ball like being his friend, and then the next time he turned on him, and then the next time, then it progressed to, then we had the pogo planes, but then, then it did keep progressing. So the stakes did keep going up. It's just, I don't know. That's just my personal preference as far as adventures in the spirit plane. But what a success with a Pat Zircher cover. G.I. Joe 3D number 3 is a winner for me. It absolutely is a winner for me. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you have a copy. You can read along. Definitely get 3D glasses for all of these. If you have them, absolutely read them at least once with 3D glasses. It is easier to kind of read them. What am I talking about? I have terrible vision, so that's probably why I'm having trouble seeing it. But they're so much fun. I do have 4, 5, and 6 in the annual. I don't know where they are. I just did some reorganizing, and they should have popped up in it, and I don't know where they're at. So if I can find them, we'll do them next week. We'll do 4 next week. If I can't, we'll do something else next week, and we'll eventually circle back to get 4, 5, and 6 in the annual. I absolutely have them. I read them like last year. I just don't know where they got filed. So, sign of a man with too many comics. I appreciate each and every one of you listeners. Everyone, I want you to have a great week. Oh, the biggest news I totally forgot to mention up top, the G.I. Joe Omnibus is being printed. The news dropped today. That's so exciting that we know that they said they were going to do it, but it sounds like it's official. Skybound is putting out a 1 through 50 omnibus in October 2024. It's not called an omnibus. It's called a they didn't use the word omnibus specifically, and I forget the word they used, but it's I believe what they're doing is they're printing it more like those really thick, smaller Walking Dead compendiums. That's the right word. They're calling them compendiums. So they're not going to be oversized like the Marvel hardcover omnibuses. They're going to be smaller. I'm assuming the exact same formats as the Walking Dead compendiums, which is how I read Walking Dead, and it worked really well. So I'm a fan of those. Thinner pages, more newsprint kind of pages. It'll sit on your shelf and won't take up an entire row of shelves. It'll be 4 books, 3 books. If they do 50 a piece, it'll be 3 books. Maybe 4 if they... Oh, no, they'll do 4 because they'll do special missions. So I imagine it'll be 4 books for all the Marvel years. Guessing. It seems like that would make sense. Factor in, 30 issues of special missions and stuff. Maybe Transformers in there, too. So, anyway, exciting news. Mark your calendar, October 2024. And I will hear you all next week, or you'll hear me next week, and I'll see you, and I'll talk to you online. So, because now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.